Hi, I'm Adrian Branch, former pro athlete turned motivational speaker and certified life coach, and welcome to The Climb, a show where we celebrate the stories of resilient people sharing how they turned adversity into success. From the business sector to athletes and beyond, be inspired and learn what it takes to climb. Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome to The Climb. My name is Adrian Branch, and this show is intentional about bringing you stories about overcoming. We want you to hear people's story. What was their processes? What was their mindset? If they can do it, I can do it too. And the reason why we're so passionate about this, because in this world, you're always going to hear that you're not enough. You're not tall enough, fast enough, small enough, short enough. But when you hear other people's story, we want you to come away from this show saying, if they can do it, I can do it too. If they can overcome, I can overcome as well. Well, today's guest, you're going to love him. There's a lot to identify with him. His name is Jonathan Paul. He's been a friend of mine for over 25 years. We love him. He loves our family. We've been connected at the hip. He's been a consultant. He's a dad. He's a business person. And he's a person that when you come away from this show, you're saying, wow, this guy was really deep, but a simple man that just continues to show resilience. He's a gentleman and a gentleman, and I'm excited to have him on our show. So, Jonathan Paul, welcome to our show, sir.
Yeah, great to see you, Adrian. Thank you for having me today.
Man, listen, I can't wait to get into it for people to hear your story. And I want to jump right into it because John, you got a fun fact. So your family is in the history books. Tell us about your 3X great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, so my mother's great grandfather and my great grandfather is from the Midwest, from Springfield, Illinois, land of Lincoln. And my great grandfather Lyons lived across the street from Abraham Lincoln, was the both the town pharmacist and owned a farm, and ran both businesses every year, and was friends with Abraham Lincoln.
And his house is reserved. He was so close that his house is reserved just like the president's is?
Yeah, so in Old Town Springfield, 5 of the houses were preserved by the federal government, and his house right across the street is one of them. So part of our own family history and family lore is we like to think that Abraham Lincoln, after work on a summer's day, would walk across the street and have a lemonade with grandfather Lyons, and they would share stories together.
And whisper in his ear. And it's interesting because now, as he's a president and your great grandfather whispered into the ear of a president, you today whisper into the ears of presidents with your consulting, which we'll talk about. But also, tell us about when you were 12 years old. It was a profound moment for you with the influences of your uncles.
Yeah, so it comes from 6 generations of business owners that came from the Midwest and continued to build the family farm into large enterprises, and working for them in the summers. When I was 12, I worked with them every summer from when I was 12 to when I was 18. I decided I wanted to own a small business that made a big impact in the world.
Now, it's interesting where you say you learned a few things from them. You learned to work hard, stay humble, and really be smart because you had to know the product. Even at 12 years old, what was that born out of? How did you know to have those 3 qualities?
Well, I think I watched my 2 uncles as they led large workforces, and they were both really humble. And one of the things I noticed about both of them that I worked for was that farming requires continued sowing. So you got to get up regularly, no matter what's going on, and sow seed, and sow seed, and sow seed, and till the soil, and keep the weeds out so that the crops can grow. And it was that kind of regularity done with great intentionality and great hard work, and but done with teams of people that loved working for my uncle that made a big impression on me.
I'm going to ride that one where you said, I like how you said it, just simple statements where you have to sow seeds regularly. Sow seeds, sow
Yeah.
seeds. So I'm sure that we can take that to every area of our life for your physical man, your spiritual man, your emotional man, for your friendships and relationships. We've been connected for 25 years and have to sow that seed. I've never heard it like that. I've been so impressed as you say that. Then at 23, this was a climb moment. This was a watershed moment for you. Tell us about when you were 23 years old. A lot was happening at that time.
Yeah, so I grew up and I'd always wanted to be a business consultant. So I studied economics at school. I grew up largely in Canada, came to the States in my senior year of high school, was recruited to play soccer by 7 schools, and chose a small school, private school, to study economics at. Played soccer for 4 years and tennis, and did well academically. I was engaged to be married to the homecoming queen. And as we began going through pre-Canaan, I began to study the Bible, and I began to feel the call of God the Father into a fuller relationship with Him. And the Monsignor who was leading pre-Canaan was really helpful in guiding me and feeding my interest. But at that time, my fiance was not interested in pursuing what I was pursuing, and our engagement ended, which meant that I made a decision to follow Christ. I lost the engagement, lost the family, and even the current position I was in, and had a big change at 23.
So it's interesting. A lot's going on. You're a young, gifted guy. You stand on the shoulders of giants because you said that you were going to be a sixth generation business owner. And then at 23, you're moving along. The train is on the tracks, but then you get this heartbreak. Tell the audience, tell the climbers out there how you felt, because I'm sure there's a listener out there that's saying, that's happened to me. Man, I had a life change, or I'm committing myself to Jesus, and then my life is turned upside down. What did you learn and how did you process that?
Yeah, that's a great way to say that. You and I talked about this, but I actually felt shame when
Mm.
not because I chose Christ, but because I lost something that was so sacred to me by making that decision. And the one thing I felt like at the time was I felt both the shame and rejection of losing everything I had known, but I also felt the reassurance that that God had a very, very clear purpose and plan for me.
So a lot of in that dichotomy that's going on, you're a young guy, you're experiencing life, you have some heartbreak in life, but yet you're saying like there's a quiet reassurance, like I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna pull
Yes,
myself
that's
out of
it.
it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
overcome.
beautiful. A quiet reassurance that God is with me, that this was not this was neither a random decision nor a destructive one. It was, as you and I talked about, it was a calling I could not ignore.
Wow. And
And yeah. So
no,
during that time of coming to know Christ, losing my engagement, I decided to sow the seeds of beginning to start my own consulting firm.
and at 26 years old, you started, and it's interesting where you say it was built on relentlessness, tenacity, and humility. So at 26, you're building this business, but it was interesting. You said you were so young or so young looking that you had to get an older guy that looks like me nowadays and say he had to be the face of that. Tell us about starting that business. And you were wise enough, as young as you were, to get a veteran presence to articulate the vision.
Yeah, when I was 26 and I began working with public companies. I had developed a framework that would guide them in how they hired mass sales forces and began working with headquarters companies. But at the same time, uh, when I was growing up, there wasn't 26-year-olds that worked with Fortune 500 companies. Now it's a commonality, then it was a abnormality. And so I hired a 55-year-old man to be my vice president, even though I was the president and owner, and he became the face of the company so that we could break down doors and gain access to opportunities for consulting.
It's interesting. I'm hearing that 12-year-old that where you said you learned from your uncles to really be smart. That was a very, very smart move to have a veteran face of that. But here's interesting, John. Most businesses fail within 3 years. How were you able, at such a young guy, to overcome that, to climb, to say, we're going to do this? What was the wisdom and the secret sauce to continue to overcome and keep your business going and be successful with 3 businesses and 26
Yeah,
employees?
yeah. So I knew that the first 3 years would be the hardest part, right? So I had studied the stats. I'd actually studied business since I was 12, since I made that decision. Study how businesses work, how they got started, how you establish one. And so I sowed seeds, sowed seeds day and night. The first 3 years, I called large companies relentlessly and told them I could solve their problems and listened to their problems and gave them an outline of how to solve big problems that they were facing as organizations. And I did that over and over and over. I never stopped sowing the seed, really, for the first 7 years of the business. I was relentless about that.
It's interesting. I'm going to stop you right there before your 40th birthday. Did you like what you were becoming? Who was John Paul at that time? What was your mindset? I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good to be a young stud and a business owner. Where was the humility? What was the self-talk during those years?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. One of the phrases that you had talked to me about when you entered the NBA was you made the statement to me. It's never left me, which is this all the NBA is?
Mm.
And you were surprised in a sense how easily you fit into that from a physical gift standpoint. So I was successful pretty quickly in business. And I had the same reaction. Is this all business is? It seems too easy. And so, yeah, I built the business the first 7 years. At the same time, I had felt a calling to begin to pray for a woman I had met that was beginning to show the effects of having multiple sclerosis in her body. And that was a mystery to me. I felt like God had laid her on my heart to pray for her. And as I was building this business, I felt the pull to both be praying for her. And then God began to introduce us. We began to meet, not on any effort of my own. We just began to be in the same places. And there was a time where I felt like this was the answer to the decision at 23 to not pursue my fiance, but to pursue Janet, who was my wife for 19 years.
Yeah, I had the privilege of meeting her, and you guys have your precious son, Jamie. So life is coming at you, and you're making that adjustment. You're still being successful. At 40 years old, it was another watershed moment. Tell us about when you were 40 years old. What was happening in your life?
Yeah, so precursor to that was I was building the business. We were opening offices, opened 3 offices, and we were enjoying success. Built the company to about 26 people, and we were working in 15 cities across the United States. And at the same time, I had married Janet 5 years earlier, 4 years earlier, and, she began to get worse, which was not an expectation, very quickly. And so I quickly, right after we got married, became her nighttime attendant, which meant that I actually had to do caregiving and was awake every 30 minutes in order to turn her in bed and take care of her. And then she required care both in the mornings and the evenings because she began to lose use of her legs.
Beautiful story where you are just a guy that gives a darn, and it's just so
Mm.
amazing, and you're still able to come out on top. That's why I wanted you on this show specifically for our climbers, because people deal with situations. They deal with life. They deal with life from the heartbreak where you said in your marriage, from where you were learning businesses, and where you even said your grandfather had generations of black lungs and had to deal with disability. So the interesting thing is that drove you to purpose. You talk about purpose a lot. Tell us about purpose and overcoming and why purpose is so important to you.
Yeah, there's a phrase that a friend of mine used that said, when the road is most difficult, the calling is clearest. When the road is most difficult, the calling is clearest. And so I refer to that in my calling to take care of, to marry and both to take care and honor the dignity of Janet, my first wife. And the same calling that also included owning a business. And you're alluding to like what that looked like. It was very difficult. I had very, very clear purpose in my marriage, a very clear purpose in my business. But what I didn't account for was how much work it would take. And so for 12 years, I ended up working almost 24 hours a day. I was literally up every half hour at night for 12 years and doing caregiving as soon as I came home at night from working with, we had a large suite of companies and projects, Fortune 500 companies at the time. And after 12 years of that, my body wore out and I was diagnosed with cancer.
How did you feel? And you saw you knew how you got there because you weren't able to rest and you weren't able to just be still. So, as a man in your prime, a young man, how did you feel and how did you overcome to where you are today? What was the process?
Yeah, that's good. So I had to re-examine my life. And even though my business was prosperous, I never really enjoyed all the prosperity it offered. I mean, it allowed for financing, really building a caregiving facility in our home, hiring attendants, that kind of thing. But life had just become serving duty rather than enjoying God. And one morning, as I sat in the cancer ward and had to reconcile my life because I had a 50% chance to live, I heard the Lord speak something I'll never forget, which was, Jonathan, you've never enjoyed the harvest.
Mm.
Jonathan, you've never enjoyed the harvest. And I knew what it meant. It meant that I had worked really hard and God wanted me to enjoy the fruitfulness of my purpose. Along with the sowing, he also wanted me to enjoy the reaping. And I had given the reaping away to others.
Yes, where you said enjoy the harvest. So I like where now with your consulting business, I had to write this down, and I've seen you work, and I still had to write this down. You have a unique approach because in your consulting business, it's organization through psychology and human purpose. Simple statement, but explain what it is with Jonathan Paul Consulting.
Yeah, so during the time that I was recovering from cancer, um, God really kind of realigned my life. And what that looked like was moving from 300 clients, 26 employees working in 3 offices in 15 cities across the United States to working with 3 companies. and really honing in on the core stuff that I developed. It also meant going to school for clinical psychology to study motivation and really study human purpose, the genesis of it, where it starts, how it works in a life, and where we can go wrong in thinking purpose is calling and it's not. And so God just began to, I began to live into the harvest that God had already prepared for me, in a sense, and not a prosperity gospel kind of thing as much as uh, I began a really fruitful consulting practice I went from 26 employees to two, and worked with privately held companies that really prized the stuff that we were doing, which was integration of clinical psychology with business consulting practices, and really focusing on leaders' individual purpose as well as an organization's purpose.
Yeah, I have a quote from one of your businesses. Working with John Paul for nearly 20 years, his expertise and ability to connect with people made him invaluable to our company. So the relationships with people, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Give us the secret sauce behind that statement.
Yeah, so I think you and I have a deep love for people. I thought about something that you and I both share is I think what you and I both want to see when we meet, we respect it about each other, but we want to see it when we're meeting with other people as part of our own gifts is calling other people forth into their purpose and calling them forth into the dignity of who they're created to be in the image of God.
I love that one. So it is, and I love that one, and it's a simple statement, but I'm just thinking about it. I'm thinking like, man, so you're basically saying everyone can use a attaboy, attagirl. Is this a truism? The number one need is acceptance. The number one fear is rejection. And you talk a lot about performance. You perform, we perform. Naturally, we want to perform to make these teams or uh, make that tribe and connection. Tell us about performance and how dangerous that can be if it's not in the right mindset.
Oh, that's really good. That's well done. So, yeah. So when you understand your purpose, like all of us learn a way in the world. That's our motivation. We learn how to perform in order to be affirmed. And my journey to the cancer ward was trying to meet a need which affirmed my identity. So I had so many needs that I was meeting, it literally killed me and literally was killing me. And I realized that the way that I had learned to be affirmed growing up was by meeting needs. And we all have this mechanism in us that this learned affirmations, it's a way that we perform in the world that reaffirms who we are. And God's way of doing things is completely different. It's He accepts us fully, and then He harnesses us into a purpose that gives us both life and fruitfulness. In my life post cancer, even though it hit some difficulties still, I lost my wife to MS 15 years ago. But it's been fruitful. I've enjoyed the harvest the last 15 years of a new marriage, a really fruitful business that is much smaller, but much more enjoyable, and going really deep with people and really understanding that God's way is the best way. When we lean into His purposes for us, life is twice as good and half as hard.
You say a garden life. Explain that one. A simple statement again. And folks, my buddy John makes the simple statements, and I have to digest and chew the cud, digest what is said. You have now, and you've earned this one. My goodness, a simple statement, a garden life with you and Maria. What is that like now after so much hurt from really both of you guys' story?
Yeah, so yeah, God, look, Maria's my second wife. My first wife died 15 years ago. And uh, I think we both, when we met each other, we both had gotten to a point in our lives where we had not necessarily uh, believed that there was somebody that God had for us, and but we both found that we felt drawn to each other. We met in our son's high school, and our life has been just both really fruitful, meaningful, and we call it our garden life because literally God has built beautiful gardens around our home as part of our home and put our feet in spacious places. And we know that that has nothing to do with us or even our efforts because there's a lot of people that work hard. But look, the God life journey into his purposes leads to the garden life, leads to not just a life of fruitfulness, but a life of beauty.
My goodness, simple statements, and you have to digest what is said and almost read it slowly. So, for the listeners out there, make sure you run this show back in the conversations. Talking about those businesses and your consulting, how can you tell a successful business? How can you tell the DNA of a poor run businesses?
Yeah, very good. So, yeah, we look at 5 areas of a business, but the overall theme is: are they investing in their people's continual advancement and development, and do they care about their people? Like, are they harnessing the best good of their people by helping people understand their purpose? And creating the means by which people are developed so they can reach their potential within their firms.
What really right now, and you have that story from a 12-year-old, a legacy of being connected with Abraham Lincoln, precious family, successes and challenges of family. Today, as you and I are privileged to start our sixth decade, who is John Paul? Do you like what you're becoming? Do you like what you're unbecoming?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, do I like what I'm becoming? Uh, I uh, I'm enjoying more and more the love of the Father, and I think that as people everywhere, uh, part of our growing in our own journey is learning to receive the fullness of the love of the Father and learning to let go of our tendency to perform in order to be affirmed. And I'm letting go more and more in a sense, and but life's no less fruitful, right? Like our relationship has grown for 20 years and 25 years, and amen, right? And I love you because why? Because you lean in, man, because you lean in.
Well, I remember this. I'm listening because you talk about God and faith, and I'm a person of God and faith. But I still remember being a knucklehead on those LSD trips, being lost, stupid, and dumb, dancing when there ain't no music. I got to act like I'm 61 now, folks. But, I remember the underground. John, my question to you is talk to that person out there that's like, man, that's good for you. That's your truth. That ain't good for me. God, where is God for me? So, why is God so real to you?
Because he's better than we ever dreamed he was. I think that when you live yeah, I lived in a life support situation for 19 years. So when you live in the shadow of death for a long period of time, you realize the goodness of the light and the love of Christ. And it's an important thing. I think most people don't realize how deeply they're loved, how they will never be let go by God, and that really his purposes are far more fruitful than we can choose on our own. And he uses the stuff that gives us joy, like uh, our
Families.
lives are. Yeah, families, but he also uses our gifts. I mean, he wants to harness our gifts, the things we enjoy doing, things that allow us fulfillment in serving others. Um, Part of our work at Jonathan Paul Consulting is we help people understand what their specific gifts, motivations, passion, and purpose is. And God uses that. And He just uses it far more fully for your own good and benefit than people might realize.
Wow, this is so profound. I said at the top of the show that you were a gentleman and a gentleman, but Saint Francis de Sales said there's nothing stronger than gentleness, and there's no strength stronger than gentleness. And I hear the gentleness and the strength through brokenness. Before we let you go, um, what is one thing you would say that can encourage our listeners? What would you say to the listeners out there to encourage them to keep climbing?
There is a purpose, a unique purpose only you can fulfill. There is a unique purpose only you can fulfill in this world, and to know it fully will give your life meaning and hope.
Well, thank you, John. That is wonderful. Where can our followers follow you if they want to know more about Jonathan Paul Consulting? Where can they follow you or even on social media?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we have a website called Jonathan Paul Consulting. It's really for organizational leaders, but have a book coming out hopefully this year called The Wonder of Purpose, which will walk people through their how to determine and understand the purpose that's already written inside their heart and their DNA. And so hopefully that'll be out this year along with other resources that'll help people walk through understanding their own purpose.
Well, John, you are the best. I love you. Our family loves you. And brother, you just continue to get wiser and more sincere. Love you. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
You're a special guy. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I love you, man. Thank you for the time.
Jonathan Paul, everybody. My goodness, you're a special guy. I'm glad you guys were able to dig in on this one today. And if you want to learn more about us, head on over to adrianbranchspeaks.com. Follow us on social media at Adrian Branch Speaks and download The Climb wherever podcasts are available. You guys are awesome. We love bringing you this show. We'll see you next time. And remember, be encouraged and keep climbing. Thanks, everybody.